Good evening and welcome to the Chicago Westside branch NAACP. I am Phyllis Logan, your host. As always, we welcome you this Monday evening, 7:30 p.m. We're here until the end of December. We apologize for not being here last week, a little minor incident with a tire, not being able to drive all the way. But tonight we have two good topics that I want to speak with you about. And feel free to call in. We're a live, interactive CAN-TV show, 312-738-1060. And as always, if you do not have the opportunity to reach us this evening, feel free to call our office. We're located at 5820 West Chicago Avenue. Our phone number is 773-261-5890. We are the Chicago Westside branch NAACP. So thank you again, once again, and thank you to CAN-TV for allowing us. I want to start off with some information in reference to the Cook County Assessor's Office this evening for our veterans. I know many times we don't get the information in a timely fashion, and we wind up losing out on any possibilities that work in our favor, benefits as we call them. The 2017 update for the disabled veterans homeowners exemption, Cook County Assessor's Office put this notice out a couple of weeks ago. Beginning in early February, renewal forms were mailed to those who received the disabled vets exemption last year. Also in February, first-time applicants should be able to download these forms at the Cook County Assessor's.com webpage. You need to get these. You have to renew this application for this exemption every year. And what's happening is, for those veterans who applied last year for the first year and received those exemption amounts on their property tax bill, if you did not renew it this year, then you possibly saw your taxes increase, and that could be the problem. And I've had some phone calls to our office with people telling me that their mortgage payments went up. Well, the reason why the mortgage payment went up is possibly because you did not refile for the exemption under the Veterans Homeowners Exemption Act. So please call the assessor's office. They have a downtown office at 118 North Clark Street on the third floor, room 320. You can go down there and apply. If you can make it to a library, you can download the form from CookCountyAssessor.com and get the Veterans Exemption form, so you can get that in. And then there's offices also out in Markham, Bridgeview, and Skokie. But we want you to be able to receive the benefits so that your mortgage payment can go back down to what it was when you initially got the first exemption. So please do that. It's very important. You have to renew this every year. No form comes in the mail to tell you, to remind you. You have to be aware of this when it's time for the filings. And sometimes it's reported on the news as a notice, and sometimes it's not. But you have to be aware that this is a renewable application every tax year for your properties. So the next topic we're going to talk about is, the U.S. Census. The NAACP National Office filed a lawsuit last month out of D.C., and this lawsuit is against the U.S. Department of Commerce. Every 10 years, the Constitution requires the federal government to attempt to count every U.S. citizen. The results of the census helps determine the balance of political power among and within the states, and the distribution of day-to-day government services. The dollars that come in via taxes, fines, and all of the dollars revenue that comes into the federal government. They have to distribute that according to the population. The federal government uses the census data to apportion seats in the U.S. House of Representatives. Talk is out there that Illinois may lose a seat because we've lost a large population of people within the last 5 years or so. And then they draw the maps to show where these representatives are from and their size of population that they represent. They enforce voting rights. They build schools. They allocate more than $400 billion in federal funds. The NAACP is stating that the task of the U.S. Census Bureau taking on this count for Americans has been a disservice to us thus far. We have a new administration in Washington, D.C., and what they have not done is come up with the design for the form, which is way past their deadline. They've not come up with the design of the form, nor the printing company to print the form, nor have they started educating people on what the form will look like and where the population is that they need to go out and count. Because they are being slow with their process, come 2019, when it's time to actually hit the ground, 2018, they will not be prepared to hire folks on to start initiating these counts or going out into the communities, getting the proper training to go out into the communities to make these numbers count. The 2020 census, which is very important, the total cost, they have not come up with a budget to do this. Congress, I don't know what they're waiting on, but the United States Census Bureau has not come up with a budget to start this work. And if without a budget, they cannot hire people on. They cannot print material. They cannot design material. They cannot get material out to get input from the community to see which design works best. So we really don't know what they're doing. And with that, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, the NAACP, our national office has filed this lawsuit stating that the U.S. Department of Commerce is in the wrong. They really need to be accountable for what that department is for, but they also need to do the job of bringing in the distribution of these numbers on a regular basis as they should, or in a timely way as they should. Every 10 years, citizens are counted. And the reason why citizens are counted is to distribute this $400 billion the proper way. If we don't get counted the right way, or we don't get counted correctly, we lose a lot. Chicago Westside, Southside, case in point, we had over 50 schools closed in the past 5 years. Those schools were closing because population was downsized. Population could have been downsized because of the 2010 census. If someone knocked at your door, sent you a postcard, asked you to fill it out, to tell them who's in your home, how many people are in your home, how many kids of a certain age are in your home, how many adults are in your home, how many people with disabilities are in your home. If they know how many children are in the home and in the neighborhood, in the community, then they know that a school is required. And then funding for that school could be allocated to that community. We have to understand how these processes work. And if we don't do our job and making sure that we're accounted for, then we could surely lose more than the 50 schools that we've lost out of the South Side and the West Side of Chicago. The NAACP is proposing to, if we have to on our own, get out there and do the footwork to count the people within our communities. If no one else will do it, we have to do it ourselves. Now, doesn't mean that we will do it for free. We would be hoping to be on the payroll of the U.S. Department of Commerce, but we want to make sure that the counts are being accurately done. And it's just like anyone else. If someone knocks on your door and you have no idea who they are and they don't look like you, you won't give them the valuable information that they're requesting for. So we're hoping that with all of the members that we have on a national basis, state by state, city by city, that we could be the ones either to help get others trained to do the census count, to be able to knock on the doors more than one time in order to get the information. Maybe get people who are familiar with the community to work within that community, but we have to get the census counted. We have to get our numbers accounted for. And it's really sad that, they say that one population is surpassing another population in numbers. Maybe those communities have decided on their own to do the work themselves as well to make sure that they are accounted for. In the African American community, the Black community, we have to do the same thing. We have to account for who's in our neighborhoods, how many kids are in our communities, and then base that on a quality education that's needed, the brick and mortar that's needed, the supplies that are needed, the qualified teachers that are needed within our community to make education work for us better than what it has done in the past. The census also states that by the traditional 2020 census, normal cost is $17.8 billion that's needed to do this. Right now, they only have $12.5 billion set aside. This is another reason why the NAACP national office is suing the U.S. Department of Commerce. Give me a call, 312-738-1060. We're a live interactive show. I'd love to hear your questions or comment. And if you know of anyone who could be of assistance, feel free to give our office a call. Let us know that you want to take part in being proactive to make sure that our neighborhoods get counted. When we talk about grocery stores, no one will build a grocery store if they know that there's no population in a dense community. There's no reason for a grocery store if the census doesn't tell them or the data doesn't tell them that there's a population to serve. We have to do right by ourselves and make sure that we're recognized as a population within these blighted communities to say, yes, we still live here. And the only way to do that is to make sure that you're counted. Doesn't matter how many people are in the household. If you have adults living at home, young adults, they're grown, but they live in the home, you have to account for everyone. If they have children, you have to account for everyone that's in the household. If there's children with disabilities, and this is the other area that's of concern, they're taking away all of the special needs education that's within certain schools, elementary schools that are in our neighborhoods, even the high schools. The Westside, we really don't have a high school on the Westside unless it's a private high school or if it's one of the charter schools. We don't have a public high school on the Westside of Chicago. If one is needed, the population has to show that it exists. Otherwise, if you don't state that you're of a low income, they won't think that you need services. And then they'll have no other choice but to put out products and services that cost. And families who cannot afford to pay for these services are not being accounted for because you're not filling out the one-page census bureau, census tract. The census asks, very simple things. It will ask you your race. It'll ask you if you're mixed race, if you're more than one race, what those races are. Those are some of the methodologies that they use. They'll ask you your age. They'll ask you about your disability. They'll ask you if you're the homeowner or are you a tenant. And being a tenant as opposed to a homeowner is also very important. If you're paying rent, then it helps with insurance companies that have to pay for tenants' insurance. But it also accounts for the number of families that are within one space. If it's a multi-unit building, they have to count both units and count everyone that's in the building. It'll ask you also your income level. This way, if they know that they have just as many low income as they have medium income families, then they'll know how to put subsidies within the community. Healthcare, it also works for healthcare. It will also be a question there to state if you're paying for healthcare. It may be a question there. We don't know. They haven't put the new designs out yet. But if it asks you if you're paying for Medicaid or Medicare, those are also factors that talk about the income categories that individuals are in. it is so important that we fill out these census when it's time for us to do so. One of the other categories that is really big is whether or not a person is in the military or not. We need to know how many veterans are in our communities, how many are disabled, how many just the age of the veteran. It doesn't ask which war or which time frame you went into the services. It doesn't ask which branch of service. It just wants to know so that we'll know that those services are needed within the community as well. We have a little bit over 10 minutes to go. Please feel free to call in with your questions or comments, 312-738-1060. We're just trying to make sure that the community understands the importance of the census, but to also know that we're being slighted by our own government, the U.S. Commerce. If they don't supply us with the materials to do the census the proper way, which has been going on for years, then we stand a chance to lose even more. Our communities are already blighted. We're desert. We don't have grocery stores in our communities because they don't know that the number of people that are in these communities is a qualified number for them to bring the services. Many of these communities are being gentrified. They're changing the landscape. We hear that prices are going up and people are being priced out. No one knows what income level you are and whether or not you are in need of services. So when we don't buy our own communities, other people buy, and then the prices go up, and then the services come in because they're spending money. The census data is very important because it talks about the population, and most big cities, Chicago is 5th on the list as far as big cities. You've got New York, California, and Chicago's the 3rd largest city. And no one will know how many people within that population are black, Hispanic, white, if you're not counting for yourself. So you have to give them the added information so that they can tally our communities the proper way. But one of the other things within the lawsuit from the NAACP, it states that the Census Bureau faces serious obstacles in preparing the 2020 census. Their hiring and personnel gaps have exacerbated. We have a federal hiring freeze. They can't hire anyone if the government has chosen to not hire any more people. So that's another barrier, obstacle that's in the way of making sure that the 2020 census happens. Let's see. They're trying to digitize the census. If they say that everyone within the community can go online, and we have families who don't have access to technology, to computers, how can you yourself go and do the census not unless you go to the library? And if the library nearest you is not open because they've decreased their hours, workable hours, then you still don't have access to a computer. So if they digitize everyone, then that impacts many communities of low income, and it takes you out of the count. That's another part of the lawsuit that the NAACP is charging the census with. Could be a cyber attack. I mean, we just talked about cyber attacks when it comes to our credit, when it comes to us voting. What if there's a cyber attack that washes away our number count? We don't know what these people are doing with this technology. You know, I'm one of those to believe, we got to go back to old school and keep stuff on paper. So it could be a lack of senior leadership. If our elders don't have access to the computers, then they won't be counted for, and there goes the services that we need for our senior citizens. They're talking about a budget shortfall. They're cutting the budget just this week. They're talking about the national budget. If they cut this portion of cost that needs to be designated to the census, then they may not do an accurate job. And once again, we're not counted for properly. The Bureau has failed to fully communicate to the public how it plans to carry out the 2020 census. We should be hearing the plan by now. This is 2017 going into 2018. We should be hearing about the plan right now, and we're not. So there's a lot of things, and we're just asking you, our audience, to help support the NAACP and all that we do. And our causes are true and real, and we're very, very passionate about the charges that we take on. But this is one that everyone should be aware of. If the census, if the federal government is putting obstacles in the way that our communities are not counted the proper way, then we don't get the services that we're due, given our income scales or whatever. We are, as they would call, we're the harmed population. We're the ones that are fighting for the civil rights. The civil rights was brought on for low and very low income families, but also for people of color. So we're being attacked in every way conceivable that this government can possibly create to harm us even more. So we need your assistance. We need you to help join the fight with us so that we can make sure when it's time to count, when this material comes out, when we make the announcement that there's a community forum to talk about the census, that there's also access to job opportunities to work for the census, that you actually go and do your due diligence, prepare yourself, be hired, and then go out and do the count. We've heard of other people coming into our community that do the count, and then months later they find all of the material in the trash. It's really hard to try to fathom that, but it can happen, and it possibly has happened, and who's to say it won't happen if we allow other people to count us. I think that's really what the NAACP is really trying to push that comment, those words to you, to make sure you understand we need to count us. We need to be held accountable for counting us, and we have to make sure that our counts are accurate and that they're true. And then when it's time to fight for our fair share of the federal government's budget, that it be allocated properly to the communities that needs the services. So we won't harp on it too much, but we just need you to know the importance of it. What we will be doing also, the NAACP, is hopefully starting in early January, we will be doing our voter registration. Another area where we are falling way short is getting out the vote. In Illinois, we've got a little over 230-some thousand, maybe 244,000 people who are of voting age, but are not registered vote. Our commitment to the national is that in the state of Illinois, we will try to fulfill an obligation to register at least 10%, 25,000 people in the state of Illinois. The big bulk of that is in the city of Chicago. We have a lot of adults who are eligible to vote but are not registered to vote for some reason. If we don't start exercising our right to vote, we possibly won't need a census because our votes are not being counted anyway. We're not choosing anyone to represent us. And then our needs are not being met because we're not being counted for. I don't know, where does that leave us? Where does that leave our community? We have got to be a little bit more concerned than the way we show people how concerned we are. To not exercise a free will to go and push a button to elect someone to represent you, and then you don't exercise that right to vote, you really don't have an argument with anyone who's not doing their job to the fullest, especially if they're not servicing you. Exercising your right to vote gives validity to the person who you choose to represent you. At least you can go back and say, I voted for you. What are you doing for me? But if you do not exercise that right to vote, if you never push that button, make that check mark, then who are you to complain if you never vote? We have got to do a better job. The percentage of people who vote during the presidential election exceeds those who vote during the midterm election. Next year, 2018, is a midterm election. We're choosing a new governor for the state of Illinois, or a governor for the state of Illinois. Will you exercise your right to vote? Will you be counted? We're electing all of our U.S. congressmen. They run every 2 years. Midterms are important. If you're not registered to vote, you need to call our office and let us help you get registered to vote. It's a simple paper. You need a form of ID that shows your location. You need to exercise your right to vote. We have got to be more accountable to ourselves in order to hold our elected officials more accountable to us. We've got our state of Illinois, some of our senators for the state, but all of our state representatives are up for election in 2018. We've got people to vote for next year, you guys. And we've got a little over 244,000 people in the state of Illinois who are eligible to vote but are not registered to vote. We need to get you registered, and we need you. We cannot hold your hand and pull you to the poll. We can hopefully encourage you to go and do the right thing and vote. But we need to show people that our votes do matter, and they matter in a bigger way than what we've represented in the past. So, I'm going to leave you with that, but, we've got to be accounted for at the census, but we've got to also hold ourselves accountable to vote in the next election. So we're going to be pushing real hard on those two areas of concern, the U.S. Census as well as getting people registered to vote, and we're hoping that you're able to call us in at our office, and maybe you can assist us with this challenge that we have. Once again, our office number is 773-261-5890, and we're located at 5820 West Chicago Avenue, right at Chicago Avenue in Mayfield, 5800 West. Can't miss us, right off the Austin bus line, right on Chicago Avenue. That's a public line. You're always welcome to call our office, stop by our office. We meet the first Saturday of every month. We have a meeting coming up next weekend, the 4th of November. Meetings start at 1 p.m. and our meetings are open to the public. But we need your help. We need you to volunteer and assist us. We're the foot soldiers, and without us, we would be lost because the numbers would not be there, and we're larger in numbers. As the statement says, our new slogan for this year is steadfast and immovable. We have got to do the right thing and help ourselves and help each other. So the census matters, and your vote counts if you exercise it. So that's all that I have for you guys this Monday evening. I'll bring back more information next week. If you know of any veterans out there who are homeowners, please pass the word on that they have to renew the application to get their exemptions on their taxes. And that's possibly one of the reasons if their payments went up, they can make those payments go right back down with finishing up that application. So with that, we wish you a good week, the whole week, and we look to talk with you more next Monday, 7:30 p.m. Thank you and have a good evening.